The day Dewing married Shay, the whole city buzzed with excitement. Everyone who was anyone attended the lavish ceremony, watching as the beautiful bride walked down the aisle toward the wealthy heir who looked at her with pure adoration. What they didn't see were the calculations running behind her perfect smile. Shay had everything a woman could want in a husband. His father's death had left him with billions in inheritance, making him one of the richest men under 40 in the country. But beyond his wealth, he possessed a gentleness that made his staff love him, and a generosity that had his friends fiercely loyal to him. When he looked at Dewing, his dark eyes held nothing but devotion. If only he could see into her heart. Dewing had spotted her opportunity the moment she first met Shay at a charity gala. While others saw a handsome, wealthy man, she saw a path to the life she had always dreamed of. His wealth wasn't just money to her. It represented freedom from the ordinary life she despised, an escape from having to work for anything ever again. Every time Shay surprised her with expensive gifts, she'd throw her arms around him and practice joy. When he planned romantic getaways, she'd kiss him with well-rehearsed passion. But in quiet moments, when he held her close and whispered his dreams of their future together, her mind wandered to shopping lists and luxury purchases. The servants in their mansion watched her carefully. They had served Shay's family for years and could sense something wasn't right about the new Mrs. Shay. The way she counted the jewelry he gave her when she thought no one was looking. How her smile dropped the moment he turned away. The cold calculation in her eyes when she looked at the family's financial statements. But Shay remained blind to it all. Even when his closest friend Marcus tried to warn him about doing suspicious behavior, Shay defended her. "You don't know her like I do," he'd say, his voice firm with conviction. "She just needs time to adjust to this lifestyle." What Shay didn't know was that Dewing had already adjusted perfectly to the lifestyle. It was him she had no interest in adjusting to. Every night, as he slept beside her, she would lie awake planning her next extravagant purchase, dreaming of ways to spend his seemingly endless wealth. The irony was that Shay would have given her anything she wanted if she had simply asked. His love for her ran so deep that no request would have been too great. But Dewing's desire went beyond mere possessions. She craved the power that came with controlling his wealth, the thrill of manipulation, and the satisfaction of knowing she had secured her luxurious future through her careful deception. And so their marriage continued, a beautiful facade hiding an ugly truth. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. The handsome, wealthy husband and his stunning wife living a life of luxury and love. But within the walls of their mansion, two very different stories unfolded. One of pure, unconditional love, and another of calculated greed. Neither of them could have predicted how dramatically their carefully constructed world would soon come crashing down. She lived in a small house on the edge of town, far from the luxury of the Shay mansion. The former driver's humble home had become Dewing's secret paradise, a place where she could escape the weight of her pretense. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had married Shay for his wealth, yet found herself drawn to a man who barely made ends meet. Their affair began one rainy afternoon when Dewing recognized T at a local cafe. He had been Shay's father's trusted driver for years before being laid off after the old man's death. Something about his wild, carefree smile made her heart race in a way Shay's gentle devotion never had. While Shay's love felt like a warm blanket, T's attention was electric, dangerous, and thrilling. "You're too good for him," would whisper in her ear during their secret meetings. Too alive, too passionate, his words fed into her vanity, making her feel justified in her deception. Together, they would laugh about Shay's blindness to their affair, sharing private jokes about the man whose money funded their rendezvous. Using Shay's wealth, Dewing transformed T's life. She bought him designer clothes, slipped him cash for renovating his house, and even purchased him a new car, all under the guise of charity donations and shopping trips for herself. The thrill of spending Shay's money on her lover gave her a twisted sense of power. Meanwhile, the whispers among Shay's friends grew louder. Marcus, Shay's closest friend, had seen Dewing's car parked near T's neighborhood more than once. The old household staff recognized T when he occasionally drove past the mansion, his new car raising eyebrows. But every time someone tried to warn Shay, his love for Dewing built a wall around his judgment. "She's been seen with someone," Marcus finally said directly one evening, his concern overwhelming his hesitation. She likes to help people in need, Shay replied, his voice carrying a hint of warning. It's one of the things I love about her. But late at night, when Dewing claimed to be visiting her sick aunt or attending charity events, doubt would creep into Shay's mind. He'd noticed small changes. The way she seemed more alive when returning from her trips, the mysterious calls she'd take in private, the growing distance in her eyes when he tried to hold her. The affair made Dewing reckless. She began taking bigger risks, staying longer at T's house, being less careful about hiding their meetings. The excitement of nearly getting caught only added to the thrill. She used Shay's business trips as opportunities for extended stays with T, turning his modest home into their love nest. She welcomed everything Dewing gave him, but beneath his passionate embraces lay a calculating mind of his own. He enjoyed the expensive gifts, the secret thrill of sleeping with his former employer's daughter-in-law, and the power he felt in possessing something that belonged to the wealthy Shay. Neither he nor Dewing realized they were playing with fire that would soon burn them both. The staff at the mansion watched this dangerous dance unfold with growing unease. The older servants who had known T during his employment couldn't believe his audacity. The younger ones pitied Shay, watching their kind employer shower love on a woman who treated his heart like a bank account. As weeks turned into months, the affair grew more intense, more demanding. Ewing lived for the moments she could escape to T's arms, addicted to the danger and passion of their forbidden relationship. She maintained her facade at home, playing the role of devoted wife, while her heart raced with plans for her next escape. But in the grand mansion, surrounded by luxury and a husband's pure love, a clock was ticking. The web of lies was stretching thin, and soon something would have to break. Neither Dewing nor T could have imagined how their carefully hidden affair would eventually come to light, or the devastating chain of events it would set in motion. Their wedding anniversary fell on a warm evening in June. Shay had planned everything perfectly, from the private chef he'd hired to prepare Dewing's favorite meal, to the diamond necklace carefully hidden in his briefcase. He even arranged to return early from his business trip, imagining the look of surprise on his wife's face when he walked through the door. The mansion was oddly quiet when he arrived. The staff exchanged nervous glances as he walked in, his excitement making him blind to their discomfort. In his hand, he carried a bouquet of red roses, Dewing's favorite. But the emptiness of their bedroom stopped him cold. The open closet doors revealed gaps where her clothes should have been, and her favorite perfume was missing from the vanity. She left 2 days ago, sir, their housekeeper finally admitted, her eyes fixed on the floor. Said she needed time to think. Something in the woman's voice made Shay's heart sink. Years of ignored warnings and dismissed doubts suddenly crashed through the walls of his denial. Without a word, he walked to his study and pulled up the security footage from his phone, something he had never done before, believing that trust was sacred in a marriage. The camera showed Dewing's car leaving the mansion at odd hours, always taking the same route. His hands trembled as he traced the path on his phone's map, leading to a familiar neighborhood, where T, his father's former driver, lived. The drive to T's house was a blur. Shay's mind raced through memories. Dewing's frequent charity work in that area, her sudden interest in helping the less fortunate, the new car he'd spotted T driving. All the pieces were falling into place, forming a picture he had refused to see. He parked his car across from T's house, his heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. The setting sun cast long shadows across the street, and through the gathering darkness, he saw them. Dewing was in T's arms on the front porch, laughing at something he'd said. She looked happier, more alive than Shay had ever seen her at home. Their eyes met across the street. Dewing's laughter died in her throat, her face draining of color as she recognized her husband's car. Time seemed to freeze as the truth hung naked between them. No more lies, no more pretense, just the raw reality of her betrayal. Shay didn't say a word. He couldn't. The pain in his chest was too intense, stealing his voice, his breath, his ability to think. He turned the key in the ignition, his vision blurring with tears as he pulled away from the curb. The city streets passed in a haze as he drove, his mind replaying every moment of their marriage in a new, harsh light. Every "I love you" she'd ever said, every kiss, every smile, all lies. The roses he'd brought lay forgotten on the passenger seat, their petals dropping one by one as he accelerated. He never saw the truck coming. Its brakes had failed on the steep hill, the driver desperately honking his horn in warning. But Shay was lost in his pain, deaf to the world around him. The impact was devastating, sending his car spinning across 3 lanes of traffic before it crashed into the concrete barrier. The world went black. When the paramedics arrived, they found the roses scattered across the wreckage, their red petals mixing with drops of blood on the shattered windshield. In Shay's pocket, the diamond necklace he'd planned to give Dewing remained in its velvet box, its sparkle dulled by the approaching night. The news spread quickly. At T's house, Dewing stood frozen on the porch, her phone displaying countless missed calls from the hospital. T had already disappeared inside, leaving her alone to face the consequences of their actions. In the distance, sirens wailed, their sound mixing with the evening wind like a mournful cry. In the intensive care unit, machines beeped steadily, monitoring Shay's failing vital signs. The doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him, unaware that his physical injuries might prove less devastating than the emotional wounds he carried. As he slipped into a coma, his mind retreated from the pain, seeking refuge in the darkness where memories couldn't follow. No one in the hospital knew that this tragedy was just the beginning. As Shay lay unconscious, fate was preparing an even more twisted path for all involved, one that would test the limits of love, betrayal, and redemption. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beeping of monitors when Shay first opened his eyes. Confusion clouded his face as he looked around the sterile white room, his mind blank as an empty canvas. In the bed next to his, a woman with kind eyes watched him carefully, noting his disorientation. "Welcome back," she said softly. Her name was Lola, and like him, she was recovering from a serious accident. The bandages on her arms told their own story of survival, but it was the warmth in her smile that caught his attention. When Dewing rushed into the room, her face a mask of concern, Shay's reaction shocked her. He stared at her with blank eyes, no recognition flickering in their depths. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. The words hit Dewing like a physical blow, but deep inside, a calculation was already forming. From her bed, Lola observed the interaction with growing unease. She noticed how Dewing's shoulders relaxed slightly at Shay's confusion, how the worry in her eyes was quickly replaced by something that looked suspiciously like relief. While nurses explained that Shay had lost his memory, Lola watched Dewing's face carefully, seeing emotions that seemed out of place for a loving wife. Days turned into weeks, and a routine developed. Dewing would visit briefly, usually during times when she knew the doctors would be doing their rounds. She'd sweep in wearing designer clothes, perform the role of concerned wife for the medical staff, then rush off claiming business matters needed her attention. But Lola, who spent her days in recovery next to Shay, saw a different story unfold. In the quiet hours between medical checks, Lola and Shay talked. She told him stories about her life, her work as a children's book illustrator, her love of garden parties, her dream of opening a small cafe. Shay listened with genuine interest, his blank slate of a mind eagerly absorbing these moments of authentic connection. "It's strange," he confided in Lola one evening. "I don't remember anything about my life, but something feels wrong when that woman, my wife, visits. Like I'm watching an actress perform a role." Lola understood exactly what he meant. She had seen how Dewing would check her phone constantly during visits, how her attention would drift when Shay tried to ask about their past together. More troubling were the times Lola overheard Dewing's phone conversations in the hallway, speaking in hushed tones about money transfers and property sales. "Your wife seems very busy," Lola said carefully one day, testing the waters. She had grown protective of Shay, seeing his vulnerability and genuine nature. "She's always rushing somewhere," Shay replied, a furrow appearing between his brows. "The doctors say we've been married for years, but she feels like a stranger. Is that normal?" Lola wanted to tell him everything she'd observed, the late-night phone calls she'd overheard, the way Dewing's eyes lit up when discussing Shay's assets with the hospital administrators, the mysterious man who sometimes waited for Dewing in the parking lot. But she held back, knowing Shay needed to heal at his own pace. Meanwhile, Doing saw Shay's memory loss as a gift from fate. With her husband unable to remember her betrayal, she had free rein to continue her affair with T while maintaining access to the wealth she had married for. She began making bolder moves, selling off smaller properties and transferring funds, all while playing the role of devoted wife during her brief hospital visits. What doing didn't count on was the growing connection between Shay and Lola. She noticed how his face would brighten when Lola entered the room, how they would share private jokes, how he seemed more at peace in Lola's presence than he ever did during her own visits. It made her uncomfortable, but not enough to change her behavior or spend more time at the hospital. "You should be careful," Doing snapped at Lola one day, catching her alone in the hallway. "Don't think I haven't noticed how you look at my husband." Lola met her gaze steadily. "I look at him with kindness," she replied quietly. "Perhaps that's what bothers you." The tension between the two women grew, but it was a silent battle. Lola continued to be there for Shay, helping him with physical therapy, sharing meals, and offering the genuine companionship he craved. She never spoke ill of Doing, but she carefully noted every inconsistency, every suspicious phone call, every hasty departure. As Shay grew stronger physically, his bond with Lola deepened. They shared a genuine connection that went beyond their shared hospital experience. In Lola, he found someone who valued him for who he was, not what he owned. In Shay, Lola saw a gentle soul who deserved far better than the deception being played out around him. Neither of them knew that soon, the truth would explode into the open, changing all their lives forever. But for now, in the quiet moments between medical rounds and Doing's brief appearances, something pure and genuine was growing. A connection built on trust, understanding, and real empathy, forming a stark contrast to the web of lies that surrounded them. The door to Chief Bod's room had remained locked since his death, gathering dust in the wing of the mansion that she rarely visited. Ewing had always wondered what secrets the old man's private chamber held, but she had respected her husband's wish to leave it untouched. Now, with Shay in the hospital and his memory gone, her curiosity overcame her caution. The key felt heavy in her hand as she stood before the door. She had found it hidden in Shay's study, tucked away in a drawer he had specifically told her never to open. The mansion was quiet, the staff gone for the evening, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the ghosts of the past. When the lock finally turned, it made a sound like a sigh. Dust motes danced in the beam of light that cut through the darkness as she pushed the door open. The room smelled of old wood and forgotten memories. Everything exactly as Chief Bod had left it years ago. "What secrets did you keep, old man?" Doing whispered to the empty room. She had never liked Shay's father. The way he looked at her during their first meeting, as if he could see right through her carefully constructed facade. Even now, his portrait on the wall seemed to watch her with suspicious eyes. Her fingers trailed across the heavy wooden desk, leaving tracks in the dust. The room was a time capsule. Half-finished letters still lay on the blotter, a coffee cup still sat in its saucer, and a calendar on the wall remained frozen on the month of his death. But it was the heavy safe in the corner that caught her attention. Hours of searching finally revealed the combination, hidden in a Bible marked with the old man's notes. Inside the safe, beneath stacks of legal documents and family photographs, she found a locked wooden box. The key hung on a chain around the neck of a small bronze Buddha statue on the desk, Chief Bod's favorite possession. The box opened with a click that seemed to echo in the silent room. Inside, a thick manila folder bore her name in Chief Bod's bold handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, and her blood ran cold as she began to read. Page after page revealed the truth. Chief Bod had known about her all along. He had hired private investigators to dig into her past before she married Shay. They had uncovered everything: her troubled history, her previous relationships, her careful planning to marry into wealth. Most devastating of all, they had documented her early meetings with T, long before she married Shay. "You cunning old fox," she whispered, her voice shaking. But there was more. Beneath the investigation reports lay a document that made her heart stop. The true copy of Shay's inheritance agreement. The words blurred before her eyes as she read the crucial clause. If Shay ever discovered her infidelity and filed for divorce, she would lose everything. Not just a portion of the wealth, but every penny, every property, every gift he had ever given her. Chief Bod had created an ironclad prenuptial agreement, hidden within the inheritance terms. As the reality of her situation sank in, Dewing's knees gave way, and she sank into Chief Bod's old leather chair. All these years, she thought she had been so clever, playing her part perfectly, keeping her affair with T hidden. But the old man had known all along, and had laid a trap that was only now springing shut. A note fell from between the pages, written in Chief Bod's hand on his deathbed. The words seemed to burn themselves into her mind. To my dear daughter-in-law, if you're reading this, you've finally given in to your curiosity. Know this: a man who built an empire never leaves anything to chance. My son's heart may be blind, but his inheritance is protected. Choose your next moves carefully. Chief Bod. Her phone buzzed, making her jump. A message from the hospital. Shay was showing signs of remembering. The words on the screen blurred as panic set in. If he remembered catching her with T, if he remembered the night of the accident, everything she had worked for would crumble. In the growing darkness of the room, Chief Bod's portrait seemed to smile knowingly. The old man had outmaneuvered her from beyond the grave, leaving her trapped in a web of her own making. As night fell over the mansion, Dewing sat in his chair, surrounded by the evidence of her deception, desperately trying to find a way out. But time was running out. In the hospital across town, Shay's memories were slowly returning, like pieces of a puzzle floating up from the depths of his mind. And in his father's dusty study, Dewing faced the terrifying reality that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. Dewing's hand shook as she stuffed jewelry and cash into her designer bag. The hospital's message about Shay's returning memory echoed in her mind like a countdown timer. She had already called T, her voice trembling as she explained the situation. He had told her to come quickly, to bring whatever valuables she could gather. They would run away together, start a new life far from here. The drive to T's house was a blur of streetlights and panic. She had taken everything she could carry: rings, necklaces, watches, and bundles of emergency cash that Shay kept in his safe. Her heart raced as she pulled up to T's small house, noticing immediately that something was wrong. The front door stood slightly open, swaying in the evening breeze. T, she called out, stepping into the dim house. T, are you here? The silence that greeted her was heavy with menace. The house looked ransacked. Drawers pulled open, clothes scattered across the floor. On the coffee table, a single piece of paper caught her eye. Her blood turned to ice as she read the words. You are nothing but a walking corpse. Better go prepare for your death. Below this chilling message lay another paper, a medical report. As Dewing read it, her legs gave way, and she collapsed onto T's worn couch. The report was clear. T was HIV positive. He had known for months, but had continued their affair without a word. A sound behind her made her spin around. 3 men in dark hoodies stood in the doorway, their faces hidden in shadow. T stepped out from behind them, but this wasn't the T she knew. Gone was the charming smile, replaced by a cold, calculating look that she had never seen before. Did you really think I loved you? T's laugh was harsh in the quiet room. You were just a means to an end, Dewing. Just like I was to you. T, please, Dewing whispered, clutching her bag of valuables closer. We can still leave together. I brought everything we need. Oh, I'll be leaving. T smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But not with you. You see, I found better opportunities. Your bag, please. The men moved forward, their intentions clear. Ewing's mind raced through her options, but there were none. She was trapped, betrayed by the man she had betrayed her husband for. The irony would have been poetic if it wasn't so terrifying. You're sick. She spat at T, her fear turning to anger. You knew you were infected, but you still, just like you knew you were married but still came to my bed, cut her off coldly. We're not so different, Dewing. We both use people to get what we want. One of the men grabbed her bag while another bound her hands with rope. Ewing struggled, but it was useless. Her mind flashed to all the warnings she had ignored. Shay's father's note, the suspicious looks from the hospital staff, even her own gut feelings about T's recent distant behavior. Just as hope seemed lost, Police sirens pierced the night. Through the window, Dewing saw police cars surrounding the house, their lights painting the walls in red and blue. A familiar figure stepped out of one of the cars. Lola. Police. Freeze. The command echoed through the house as armed officers burst through every entrance. T and his men tried to run, but found themselves surrounded. In the chaos, Dewing saw Lola watching her, not with triumph, but with a mix of pity and determination. "I followed you from the hospital," Lola explained later, as paramedics checked Dewing for injuries. "I've been documenting everything. Your suspicious behavior, the property sales, the meetings with T. When I saw you leaving the mansion with bags full of valuables, I knew something was wrong." As the police led T and his accomplices away in handcuffs, Dewing sat on the curb, her world in pieces around her. The medical report about T's HIV status felt like a death sentence. Her schemes, her affair, her attempt to steal Shay's wealth. Everything had backfired spectacularly. An officer approached her, handcuffs glinting in the police lights. "Mrs. Shay, we need you to come with us. We have some questions about certain financial transactions." In that moment, Dewing realized she had lost everything. Her lover, her wealth, her freedom, and possibly even her health. As she was led to a police car, she caught sight of her reflection in its window. The beautiful, cunning woman who had manipulated her way into wealth was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger who had gambled everything and lost. The night air carried the sound of more sirens in the distance, but Dewing barely heard them. In her mind, she saw Shay's father's knowing smile in that portrait, heard his written words again. "Choose your next moves carefully." She hadn't chosen carefully at all, and now she would pay the price for every deception, every betrayal, every moment of greed that had led her to this point. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read out the sentences. Dewing and T sat separately, neither looking at the other, their designer clothes replaced by prison uniforms. The media called it the scandal of the year, a tale of greed, betrayal, injustice that captivated the city. But for Shay, watching from the back of the courtroom with Lola by his side, it felt like watching strangers in a play. His memory had returned gradually over the months, each recovered moment more painful than the last. The doctors called it a miracle, but there were times he wished he could return to the peaceful blank slate of his amnesia. Yet with each remembered pain came a deeper appreciation for the woman who had helped him through it all. "The court finds both defendants guilty," the judge's voice echoed through the chamber. As the bailiffs led Dewing and T away to begin their sentences, Shay felt an unexpected lightness in his heart. It wasn't joy at their punishment, but rather relief that this chapter of his life was finally closing. After the trial, life began to take on new colors. The first thing Shay did was get tested for HIV. The weeks of waiting for results were the longest of his life. When the test came back negative, he and Lola celebrated with a quiet dinner in the hospital cafeteria, where they had shared so many meals during his recovery. "I never told you," Shay said that evening, "but even before my memory returned, something in my heart recognized you as safe. Like my soul knew yours was genuine." Lola smiled, the same warm smile that had first caught his attention in the hospital. "Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind forgets," she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. Their love grew naturally, like a flower turning toward the sun. There were no games, no hidden agendas, no manipulation, just two people who had found each other in the midst of chaos. Lola didn't care about his wealth or status. She loved his gentle heart, his resilient spirit, and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. The mansion, once a showcase of hollow luxury, transformed under Lola's touch. She filled it with warmth and life, her artwork on the walls, fresh flowers in every room, the sound of genuine laughter echoing through the halls. Even Chief Bod's old room, which had revealed so many secrets, became Lola's art studio, its darkness replaced by light and creativity. Their wedding was everything his first hadn't been: small, intimate, and real. They held it in the hospital garden where they had first fallen in love, surrounded by the people who had supported them through the darkest times. The old housekeeper cried tears of joy, whispering to the other staff that the house finally had a true mistress. As they exchanged vows, Shay looked into Lola's eyes and saw his future, not one built on deception and greed, but on trust, understanding, and genuine love. She wore a simple white dress, her scars from the accident visible on her arms, but to Shay, she had never looked more beautiful. I promise to love you for who you are, he said in his vows, his voice strong and clear. Not what you own or what you can give me. I promise to be real with you, always. Lola's vows were equally simple and profound. I promise to stand by you in light and darkness, to love you not for your wealth, but for your heart, and to always be your safe harbor. Life wasn't perfect after the wedding. They both carried scars from their past experiences. Sometimes Shay would wake from nightmares about the accident, and Lola would hold him until the fear passed. Other times, when dealing with business associates, he would catch himself being overly suspicious. But Lola's steady presence helped him find balance, teaching him that while not everyone could be trusted, closing his heart wasn't the answer. They turned the mansion into a place of healing, starting a foundation to help victims of fraud and abuse. Lola's art therapy programs brought new life to the cold halls that had once housed so much deception. Together, they transformed a place built on old money and secrets into one of hope and renewal. Years later, sitting in what was once Chief Bod's study, Shay found himself looking at his father's portrait with new understanding. The old man had tried to protect him with legal documents and hidden clauses, but in the end, it was love, real, genuine love, that had saved him. Your father would be proud, Lola said, entering the study with 2 cups of tea. Not just of how you handled the betrayal, but of who you've become because of it. Shay took the tea from her, pulling her close with his free arm. We all have to learn the difference between real and fake love sometime, he said softly. I just got an especially dramatic lesson. Outside their window, the garden that Lola had planted bloomed with new life, much like their love, something genuine growing from the ashes of deception. They had learned that true wealth wasn't in bank accounts or jewelry boxes, but in the authentic connection between two hearts that chose each other, not for what they could gain, but for who they truly were.